Deep in the remote wilderness of northern Utah, nestled near the ancient Ute Reservation, lies a place shrouded in mystery and fear. This land has become a focal point for events that defy logic and reason. Strange lights streak across the sky, shadowy figures vanish into thin air, and unexplained phenomena challenge the very laws of physics. A magnet for scientists, journalists, and the endlessly curious, the ranch has drawn countless seekers in search of answers, only for them to leave with more questions than they ever imagined. The Sherman Ranch. When Terry and Gwen Sherman moved to their new ranch with their children, they envisioned a peaceful life in the countryside, far from the noise and chaos of the outside world. But their sense of tranquility was short-lived. Within days of settling in, they began to notice strange occurrences, not just around the property, but in the skies above. The first signs of something unusual came in the form of lights. Brilliant, intensely colored, and moving in ways that defied explanation, these glowing anomalies quickly became a recurring presence. Terry Sherman described them as orbs, or spheres of light, darting across the night sky in erratic, almost impossible trajectories. One of the earliest and most striking events took place in April 1994. That night, Terry and his 10-year-old son watched in stunned silence as a bright light streaked across the sky at an extraordinary speed. Without warning, it changed direction abruptly, executing maneuvers no conventional aircraft could perform. They observed the phenomenon for several minutes before the light vanished without a trace. It was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the sightings grew more frequent, more intense, turning the ranch into a stage for events that defied human understanding. May 1995. The night was quiet, too quiet. Terry and Gwen Sherman stood outside their ranch, gazing at the endless stretch of sky above them. Then, without warning, it appeared. A piercing light pulsed on the horizon, flickering like a dying star. At first, they dismissed it as an approaching aircraft. But something was wrong. It wasn't moving like a plane. Instead of following a steady trajectory, the light shifted unpredictably, growing brighter, then dimming, as if reacting to some unseen force. At times, it seemed to shimmer, its color morphing from an eerie green to a deep, blood-like red. Then, the impossible happened. The light began to ascend and descend in sharp, erratic motions, defying the laws of gravity. Terry clenched his fists. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human technology. Word of the sighting spread fast. The Shermans weren't alone. Locals whispered about the strange light, claiming they had seen it too some from miles away. Visitors to the ranch reported the same phenomenon. Was it a coincidence? Or proof of something far greater, lurking just beyond the veil of human understanding? Winter, 1996. By now, the ranch was no longer just a home. It was a beacon. The sightings had become relentless. Strange lights carved silent paths through the night sky, their movements erratic, almost intelligent. Researchers whispered that Skinwalker Ranch had become a hotspot, a focal point for something beyond human comprehension. One of the most chilling encounters occurred on a freezing winter night. Terry Sherman and a longtime friend stood in the open field, their breath visible in the cold air, when it appeared. A sphere of fire. The glowing orb hovered high above the trees, pulsing with an eerie intensity. It darted upward, then plummeted, shifting directions with impossible precision, a maneuver no aircraft on Earth could perform. And yet, the night remained utterly silent. No hum of engines. No rush of wind. Nothing. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the sphere shot toward the horizon and vanished. In the weeks that followed, others began to speak out. Locals reported similar phenomena, orbs that plunged from the sky at breakneck speed, only to vanish before they touched the ground. The ranch was no longer a secret. It was a mystery waiting to be solved. Enter Robert Bigelow, a millionaire with a vision that stretched far beyond the bounds of Earth. A savvy businessman and space entrepreneur, Bigelow had already made a name for himself with his groundbreaking work in aerospace, founding Bigelow Aerospace, a company dedicated to developing space habitats. But his ambitions reached into realms that most could only imagine. The Shermans, eager to escape the haunting phenomena, sold their property to Bigelow. He, however, was not driven by fear, he was driven by curiosity. The mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch enthralled him. In his hands, the ranch would become more than just a property. It would become the epicenter of scientific exploration. He renamed it Skinwalker Ranch, and with a team of top-tier scientists and investigators, he set out to unravel the enigma that had already ensnared so many before him. The strange lights continued to streak across the sky, but now, they were being watched, studied, and documented. Bigelow founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, a cutting-edge organization tasked with investigating the unexplainable phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch. The NIDS team, comprised of specialized scientists and researchers, began conducting full-time investigations. They captured footage of spherical lights moving with precision, formations of objects arranging themselves in systematic patterns in the sky, and phenomena that defied conventional explanation, objects moving at speeds so high that they broke the very laws of physics. The phenomenon was no longer just a series of isolated incidents. It was consistent, undeniable. The area surrounding the ranch became known as a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity. Though the NIDS kept much of their data under wraps, they publicly acknowledged that the manifestations observed were of an extraordinarily unusual nature. What was happening at Skinwalker Ranch? No one could say for certain, but everyone agreed on one thing: something impossible was unfolding. To understand the impact and scope of the investigations, it is essential to establish a chronology of NIDS' involvement with Skinwalker Ranch. The first order of business was clear: document the UFO sightings, which were increasing with alarming frequency. The team, armed with cutting-edge technology, set to work. High-definition cameras, radar systems, and thermal sensors were deployed in an attempt to capture concrete evidence, something, anything, that could explain the inexplicable. As the nights passed, the team's efforts bore fruit, but the fruits were perplexing. They began to record spherical lights and objects in the sky that moved with unpredictable erraticism. They darted across the horizon, only to disappear in the blink of an eye, as though they had never been there at all. But it wasn't just the lights that baffled them. The researchers were equally intrigued by the advanced tracking equipment they had installed. Cameras and sensors were strategically placed around the ranch, watching every angle, every corner, hoping to catch a glimpse of something definitive. What they gathered was, at best, inconclusive. The footage was clear, the lights undeniably there, but there was no explanation, no theory that could encompass the strange movements of these anomalies. Some of the surveillance cameras captured images of unusual lights, but no one could offer a concrete reason for their existence. The evidence was consistent, but not conclusive. And the more they tried to uncover, the more they realized, the truth, if it existed, was hiding just out of reach. The NIDS team plunged deeper into the ranch's mysteries, embarking on extended field investigations that saw scientists and investigators staying on the property for days, even weeks. They observed the sky, the land, and the animals with a singular focus, to uncover any anomaly that might provide a clue to the ranch's strange occurrences. During these periods of intensive observation, a series of tests were carried out, measuring radiation levels, monitoring fluctuations in the magnetic field, and collecting samples from the soil and even from the bodies of mutilated animals. The goal was clear: to determine if there was a scientific or physical explanation for the bizarre phenomena. One of the most disturbing discoveries occurred when sensors began to pick up unexplained magnetic fluctuations in several areas of the property. Particularly in the zones where UFO sightings were most frequent, the devices recorded an anomalous variation in the magnetic field, a distortion that couldn't be attributed to natural sources like rocks or other common materials. But it didn't stop there. During these same investigations, the NIDS team began to document a series of animal mutilations. A pattern that had already plagued the ranch long before Bigelow's purchase. Yet, it was under NIDS's watch that these disturbing events were examined with renewed rigor. Animals were found dead, their bodies marked by precise incisions, with no visible blood at the scene. Even more unsettling, many of the carcasses appeared to have had internal organs removed with surgical precision, a bizarre consistency that defied any known explanation. The more the team uncovered, the more the questions mounted. What was happening at Skinwalker Ranch? Were these phenomena connected? And if so, what was the source? The mysteries only seemed to deepen with every discovery. While UFO sightings and animal mutilations dominated the headlines, the NIDS team's investigation expanded into other unexplainable phenomena that seemed to permeate every corner of the ranch. Reports of strange creatures and poltergeist-like activities began to surface, each more bizarre than the last. Whispers of unusual sounds, objects moving on their own, and an overwhelming sense of otherworldly presence began to haunt the ranch's halls. In response, the team ramped up their efforts, deploying state-of-the-art equipment to track any form of energy disturbance within the electromagnetic field, as well as capturing visual and auditory anomalies through cameras and audio recorders. Each investigation only seemed to raise more questions, yet no answers, only inexplicable patterns that hinted at a deeper, darker force at play. By 1999, the team had gathered some of their most startling evidence. Spherical lights once again appeared, but this time, their movements were captured on surveillance cameras, providing concrete documentation of the strange objects that defied the limits of scientific understanding. But that wasn't all. The team also observed shadows that seemed to defy natural laws, moving independently of any light source or environmental condition. The impossibility of it all became clear: the ranch wasn't just a site of isolated events. It was a vortex of paranormal activity, a place where the very fabric of reality seemed to bend. As the team catalogued each occurrence, the question loomed larger: what force was manipulating these phenomena? Was it alien, supernatural, or something else entirely? Whatever the answer, the ranch was no longer just a place. It had become a riddle, one that refused to be solved. In 2004, the investigations came to an unexpected halt. Robert Bigelow, the man whose ambitions had once fueled the scientific pursuit of answers, made the decision to sell Skinwalker Ranch and shut down the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS. To the public, he claimed that the research had reached a point where further data collection would no longer yield groundbreaking results. From a scientific standpoint, this conclusion made sense. Without a clear explanation or independently verifiable data to support the strange phenomena, the justification for continuing research on such a remote and expensive property was growing thin. But this reasoning, though plausible, may have been only part of the story. Over the years of investigation, the phenomena had grown increasingly unpredictable and bizarre. It wasn't just the UFO sightings and mysterious creatures anymore. There were now inexplicable radiation levels and magnetic fluctuations that seemed to affect not only the research equipment but the investigators themselves. Equipment malfunctioned, and researchers began experiencing physical discomfort, headaches, nausea, symptoms that couldn't be attributed to anything rational. The question shifted from what was happening at Skinwalker Ranch to why and who was being affected. Could it be that Bigelow, who had once been so driven by his scientific curiosity, was now confronting a reality more dangerous than he had anticipated? Perhaps the paranormal events were no longer just mysterious, they were becoming hazardous. There were reports of shadowy figures, whispers of poltergeist activity, and an overwhelming sensation of being watched by something invisible. Something that defied reason. Something that seemed to linger at the very edge of perception. Was Bigelow fearing for his safety? For the safety of his team? Could it be that the unseen dangers of Skinwalker Ranch had grown too great, pushing him to abandon the search for answers in exchange for a more secure future? The decision to sell the ranch was sudden, but perhaps not as simple as it seemed. Was it truly just the end of an experiment, or was it an escape from something far darker than anyone could explain? The reality, however, was far more unsettling. The ranch had become something otherworldly, a threat that could no longer be studied under controlled conditions. It was as if the very act of being monitored had provoked the phenomena, challenging the researchers to a deadly game. The events no longer followed any predictable pattern. Instead, they seemed to respond to their observers, escalating in intensity as if testing their limits. Some conspiracy theories suggest that Robert Bigelow had begun to suspect that the ranch wasn't just a hotspot for alien activity, there was something darker, more inexplicable, lurking beneath its surface. Another unsettling theory emerged, that government agencies had pressured Bigelow to cease his investigations. The idea was simple yet chilling. Interest in the ranch's paranormal phenomena and UFO sightings had likely drawn the attention of national security and intelligence agencies. Some went as far as to suggest that Bigelow was encouraged, or perhaps even forced, to step away from the ranch to avoid drawing the scrutiny of government officials who were watching his every move. Could it be that the Skinwalker Ranch had deeper connections to military technologies or extraterrestrial intelligence activities, things far beyond what Bigelow had originally imagined? While there is no concrete evidence to support direct government involvement, the theory gains some weight when we consider the known interest of military and intelligence agencies in UFO phenomena. One such example is the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ADIP, a secretive program run by the U.S. Department of Defense that investigated UFO sightings and related phenomena. Had Bigelow's research into the unexplainable gone too far? Or was there a hidden agenda, one with far-reaching consequences, driving him to abandon the ranch, and the questions that surrounded it? The mystery deepened, and the veil of secrecy thickened. Adamantium Real Estate Holdings acquired Skinwalker Ranch for a staggering $4.5 million, a sum that seemed almost incidental compared to the true value of the property. What raised eyebrows, however, was the complete absence of any public records detailing the individuals or organizations behind this mysterious acquisition. The shadows of secrecy deepened, and conspiracy theories flourished. Had the ranch, with its tangled history of unexplained phenomena, been purchased not for its land, but for what lay beneath it? Was there a deliberate, covert effort to continue the study of paranormal activities under the radar, to explore what others dared not approach? The lack of official reports or any public disclosure on what transpired at Skinwalker Ranch following the sale only intensified the whispers. Was this silence a carefully orchestrated campaign to obscure the truth? A concerted attempt to manipulate public perception and erase any trace of the ranch's dark legacy? The very absence of information suggested something more than just secrecy. It hinted at a hidden agenda, one that reached far beyond conventional scientific inquiry. What if Skinwalker Ranch was not simply a center of myths and legends, but instead, a hub of covert investigations? Could the land be the site of experiments and research into alien technology, or even into interdimensional interactions? Could the ranch be ground zero for an ongoing effort to understand forces not of this world, or even of this dimension? The question lingers, unanswerable. They were there, and we interacted with them. But who were they? And what was their true purpose? The veil of secrecy remains, as impenetrable as ever, leaving only speculation in its wake. If you want more conspiracy theories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. Together, we'll search for answers that no one dares to question.